Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I just had my first day of classes yesterday, October 1st, and out of the spirit of starting a new school year, I thought it would be helpful to go over a time when I was failing a class. Like, I literally got an F on the first midterm, and what I did to pass the class. Yeah, my entire sophomore year, I think, I basically got destroyed. I was taking so many classes and working and doing extracurriculars and then recruiting. So yeah, I honestly have no words for how sophomore year went because it was just so much pressure. I'm glad it's over though. But yeah, I just wanted to share my experience, so let's dive into it. So the class that I should have failed was statistics for economists, and there were a lot of different factors leading up to why that quarter just went downhill for me, but I'll just start with the first, which is the fact that I was on the board for a business club. I actually ended up formally leaving that club a couple months later on. I realized that my values and ethics did not align with theirs. Unfortunately, in the winter quarter, I had no idea that any of this was going to happen later on, so I was still biting off more than my fair share. I was doing double to triple the original workload stated under my position. There were a lot of times throughout the year when people just drop the ball. When it's a business club where everything's super structured and members are depending on you, then it almost leaves you no choice but to pick up the duties yourself, which ends up being really unfair in terms of workload. And that came out to around 10 to 20 hours for the first couple weeks of the quarter for me, which led up to my midterm. The second factor was recruitment, because I was applying to a lot of corporate programs. I ended up asking my friend to send me his notes, tried to study them as best as I could on the plane and in the hotel, but frankly, I'm just not naturally good at statistics and it takes me time to absorb it. So I think just that level of distraction and being focused on recruitment just took a mental toll on me. Another reason why that quarter was rough for me was that I had accepted an offer to work for an amazing music company. They did require us to come in 2 full days, which was 16 hours, but just because it comes down to studying versus work, then it was really difficult for me after I didn't do well my first midterm. I also had some personal stuff going on, which just made it difficult to deal with everything else. So that was some context for everything at the beginning of the quarter. And now I'm going to transition more into what happened in the week of the midterm. The first midterm for my econ class was on a Thursday, and by a stroke of bad luck, I actually ended up having 2 midterms right before, so I had 3 back-to-back midterms on the same day. If I could have done things differently, I would have checked through all the syllabuses for my classes, because hopefully I would have realized that I had 3 midterms on one day. I worked all Wednesday, and I came back from work at around 8 p.m., and then I studied until 3 to 4 a.m. And yeah, I woke up at 7 a.m., so that was 3 hours of sleep. And I tried to drink some tea, but I was not very careful and I only drank decaf. So that didn't help me stay awake during the rest of the day. My brain crashed at the econ midterm, which was at like 3 p.m. That's like the most sluggish time period of the day. Yeah, I think that was on me for studying so much the night before and then staying up late. Again, I could have spaced things out a little differently if I had probably just dropped my business club. By the end, I actually predicted that I would get a 30%. And I told my friend this as we were going out, and I was like, I really don't feel good about this. I know I got a 30%. Surprise, I got a 35%. That was the second lowest out of the entire lecture hall of around 150 kids. So that was the lowest point in my academic career. I went to the econ department and explained my situation. By that time, I was almost crying. And they told me that I needed to submit a petition because we had received our scores from the first midterm after the deadline to drop the class. And even though my reasons were pretty legitimate and unique, I don't know if they would have gotten approved for sure. On top of that, the second midterm was only 2 weeks away. Even if my petition did get approved, I would have heard back probably after the second exam period, and I couldn't just be a sitting duck, because if it didn't get approved, then I just got a 0 on the second midterm for not showing up. So I was like, you know what? I need to pour everything I have in this class. I'll just not do the petition, and I'll try to get an 85 to 90% on the second midterm and the final, which is what I needed to pass with a C, which sounds super crazy. But again, I did get a 35% on the first midterm, so that was unfortunate. I knew that I needed a miracle to pass the class, so for the second midterm, I looked at some tutors, had some sessions. A lot of them weren't a fit, which is such an exhausting process. I finally found this one tutor who was amazing, and he was so patient and kind. He wasn't condescending whenever I asked basic questions, and I owe the reason I passed this class to him. But that's not to say that he carried me, because a tutor can only do so much. They're meant to answer questions that you might have, clarify concepts, but you're ultimately the one responsible for doing all the studying. So I think it was, a mutual relationship. I also talked to my manager at work and let her know the situation that I was in. And although we couldn't reduce my hours, she was willing to let me shift my days. So since my midterms fell on Thursdays, I came in on Monday and then on Friday instead of Monday and Wednesday, which gave me more time to study beforehand. When I came in for my second midterm, my hands were shaking really badly, which has never happened to me before. But it's just because I was so stressed over the impact that failing the class would have on my GPA. And I also didn't know if I would even pass the class because, again, I couldn't drop it at this point. But I was sitting next to my friend who made some, really, assuring remarks. She knew everything that I was going through. And I think that it helps when someone's not like, oh, don't worry, you're going to do great. Because it's like, I am so stressed right now. But I think that what she said was really genuine. That helped me calm down a bit. And going through the midterm, I felt really good about it. I knew almost all the questions, and I thought maybe I came out with the low A, ended up with a B, which was fine. I was still in the running for it. I went through a similar process of study for the final, so studied every day. I also had around 2 to 3 tutoring sessions per week just to clarify some concepts, while at the same time, I was still going out of state for a diversity program, so it wasn't ideal. I also made some study buddies when I'd interacted with people in office hours or just sat down next to them. So it's important to just exchange numbers. You don't have to be best friends, but as long as you can work out the problems together and you get along, then having, the extra support is really helpful. The week before the final exam, COVID hit. And that was a super stressful time period. Again, I don't know how 2020 is getting worse, but it somehow is. My professor did make the exam open note. But even when I was trying to study, it was really hard to focus because my CEO got in the hospital for coronavirus, and my grandpa also went into the hospital for something else. When I took the final exam, I knew I had prepared, but I was still having trouble retaining some of the information, maybe because I was under so much pressure. And I came out with a 78 or 79%, and that was not enough. So at the raw score, I had a D+ in the class. But my professor curved everyone up by, I think, 1 degree. So I got rounded up to a C-. So I needed to boost up one more time to get a C. So I asked to see my exam and looked through all the problems. I vetted through that final so thoroughly. And I emailed the TAs back and forth 10 times or something. I got bumped up to an 80 to 81, but at a certain point, they were unable to give me back more points. I knew that the deadline to submit grades was on Friday for professors, and the last time I emailed him was on a Thursday night, and by that point I'd given up because I sent him so many emails and he wasn't responding to anything, and I started planning out having to retake the course the next quarter. But then at Friday at 11 a.m. he responded to me and was like, "Thank you for your email. Given your extenuating circumstances, I have decided to round you up to a C." I recalculated my grades to figure out how much of a boost he had exactly given me, and I realized that it was around 5 to 7% on the final, which was kind of a lot. I did want to go through a brief overview of the steps that I took to help out anyone else who might be in a similar situation. So I feel like it's really important to maintain communication with your professors, because right after the first midterm, I talked to him one-on-one. And after the second midterm, when I got an 81%, I sent him 1 to 2 more follow-up emails. Since it was more consistent, I think I gave him some more time to think about it. And it also built up a relationship. In my emails to him, I always re-summarized my situation just because he was teaching multiple classes with 200 to 4 students in each one. Since the emails that I sent him were pretty text heavy, I tried to use some bolding as well in select areas like for my test scores or the call to action, because it made my email a lot easier to read, especially if he's breezing through multiple emails. And kind of writing off of that point in my call to action, I would usually say something like, I totally understand that you are teaching a lot of students in this course, but if any sort of accommodations or rounding is possible, I would really appreciate it given the factors out of my control. I really am doing my best to study, but I'm not sure if it'll be enough. And again, any sort of help would be appreciated, but I totally understand if this is not possible. It's really important to maintain a respectful tone in your emails because you're also not entitled to get rounded up and your grade is in their hands. So just having a respectful tone will make them so much more likely to reconsider your situation. Even though maybe in your head you're panicking, like, oh my gosh, like please round me up. Just try to keep that professional in an email and clearly articulate your evidence or reasons of why you may not have done well the first time, but how you've been working to build up your test scores and improve your performance, and also demonstrate that you know the material. Don't underestimate the power of TAs because they usually play a role in grading. I attended my discussions almost every week and only 4 out of 20 kids showed up, so my TA was pretty familiar with me. Especially during finals week, the professor is receiving a lot of emails and he was probably a lot more likely to reconsider my situation because in a way the TAs act as a filter since I had to go through them first, and the fact that they were now sending emails on my behalf probably meant something. I also learned to think about what I was willing to invest in certain outcomes because I was going to my TA's office hours a lot, but it wasn't really enough. And I was really reluctant to seek for paid tutors because it's just so expensive and I was worried about it. But I realized that I would much rather prefer paying for a tutor for a couple weeks and passing the class rather than failing the class and then having to retake it next quarter, which is 3 months, and I might even need to pay for a tutor then. Hopefully the rest of the year will go better unless 2020 somehow gets worse. But yeah, to all of you who just started your fall quarter, good luck, you got this. And to those of you who are in the semester system and started 1 to 2 months ago, good luck on your midterms. So yeah, we'll see you next time.